What's going on, people? We've got some more Jaws of Oblivion card reviews going on today. I think this is episode 7? Session 7? I guess they're not really episodes. I don't know. We got another 7 cards we're going to talk about. We're getting closer to expansion time. It actually comes out on Tuesday. So we're just going to keep on chugging along and, keep it moving. So first up, we've got Dremora Archer. I feel like I've talked about this one already, but maybe I talked about something similar. It's a 3-cost 1/1 prophecy. Deal damage to a creature equal to Dremora Archer's power. I feel like I talked about this one already. I don't know. Either way, we'll talk about it again real quick. As a 3-cost, I guess a prophecy, you feel okay about it because it comes down as kind of similar to Sharpshooter Scout. However, with an Oblivion Gate up, it can come down as a 2/2, which means it'll deal 2 to an enemy creature. And then with things like 5th Legion Trainer, or Clan Captain, Divine Fervor, Praetorian Commander, you have ways to scale it from there. Also, with the Oblivion Gate, this card can roll lethal. So the damage from Dremora Archer would be a flat lethal ping kill if you roll lethal from your Oblivion Gate. I think this card's a little bit slow for 3. You feel a little bit better about playing it for 2, which you can get it down to 2 with your Oblivion Gate if it's at level 3. So I think this card is, okay. I think it could work. I think it's the kind of Daedra that you're probably happier about generating. Obviously, if you hit it from a prophecy, you feel great. Any free card feels okay. But paying 3 for this, I'm not super excited about. And even paying 2 for this, there's probably better options for 2. But ironically enough, 2 is probably about what I would rate this card. Is about a 2-star card. But yeah, I'm sorry if I already reviewed this one. My notes for this expansion have been a little bit messy. But next up, we've got the Gray Fox. Just in case this one's hard to see. Draw a card from your opponent's discard pile on summon. And then with a Pilfer effect, reveal a random unrevealed card from your opponent's hand. So for the stat line and the effect, it's similar to Thief of Dreams. Thief of Dreams used to be a 4 magic of 4/4, but now it's a 5 magic of 4/4. That if you guess right, you can get a card from your opponent's hand. However, Gray Fox, you get to just flat out pick a card from your opponent's discard pile. You still have to pay for it, so it's not completely bonkers. But still, stealing a particular card can be pretty solid. Additionally, the Pilfer effect, revealing a random unrevealed card. Knowledge is power, and knowledge is definitely quality. Can give you some knowledge of what to play around. But in general, it's not like it really advances you all that much. And a lot of things that you'd be playing around, you can't just flat out answer anyway. It depends on your deck. But this is definitely a decent card. Not crazy, but solid. I think it puts it probably in the 2.5-star range. I just don't really know what deck plays this and feels good about it. I definitely like the card a lot. I think it's a cool card and a well-designed card. It's just the kind of thing of what deck do you fit this into where you don't have a better play on 5? And even if you're stealing something from your opponent's discard pile, then you have to wait and play it next turn. So do you even feel okay about that? I don't know. The card is quality. It feels a little too slow for an aggressive deck and a little not quite value enough for a slow deck. So I just don't really know where this card goes is what I'm saying. That's why I think it's about a 2.5-star card. There's definitely power to the summon effect. It's just sometimes this could just be a 5 magic of 4/4, draw a meh card from your opponent. And that's okay. It's exactly what it is. It's okay. But we have probably higher power plays that you could fit into your deck. But it's a card that I'm definitely interested in playing with and will definitely be messing around with. So we'll see if we find a way to break him. Next up, we've got Fresh Start. 6 magic of action. Just flat out draw 3 cards. I think this is our first unconditional draw 3. Or it's our highest draw that has no condition on it as well. Draw 3 cards for 6 is probably mostly fairly costed, more or less. We don't really have a strong comparison, but it's probably mostly fairly costed overall. It could have probably cost 5. Maybe it would have been too good at 5. But 6 is still fair-ish, I think. I don't know. It's a weird one. Like, if you can reduce the cost a little bit, like, the only things that I really find myself loving this card with would be, like, I mean, if you have, like, Mage's Guild Recruit, and you can bring this down to 4 costs, then this card is, like, very, very good. And maybe those 2 cards can fit together in a deck. But in general, I just can't think of many decks that are going to want to pay 6 Magicka to draw 3 cards. Unless it's, like, a continuation. Because, like, the thing is, something like Spoils of War. Pay 5 to draw 2. But you can reduce that down to 0. And a lot of the decks, most of the decks, if not all of them that are playing Spoils of War, have many ways to reduce that thing down to 0, if not very close to 0. So in that case, you're paying 1, 2, at most 3 a lot of the times to draw 2 cards. And that feels a lot better. There's not a ton of easy ways to discount Fresh Start. So that's why I don't think it'll see a ton of play. Again, one of the rules of thumb in these card games is whenever there is card draw, you don't overlook it, especially something like 3 cards, because will always be a way to like push for 3 cards, or like, you know, build a combo deck that draws 3 cards and then can start doing crazy things. I don't think that's particularly set up at the moment with this card, but it's like the kind of card that you have to keep an eye on, because like I said, there's Mage's Guild Recruit, there's Thieves Guild Defense. There's ways to reduce this card. It's just you have to make it feel alright. I think this is probably a 2-star card at the moment, but maybe that type of assassin or other deck that runs assassin colors can run this card in Mage's Guild Recruit and find a way to get high value out of this, and I will gladly eat my words if I'm wrong. Next up, we've got Occult. I don't know why I thought there was like an A in there. Occult Rite Master, 4-cost Orc, 4/3. Put a Steel Dagger in your hand. Whenever Occult Rite Master equips an item, invade. So this is interesting, because between things like Crown Quartermaster, Corsair Ship, this guy himself, Sentinel Reclaimer, you have a lot of ways to generate Steel Daggers. And then you can play something like Skilled Blacksmith, make them all cost 0, and just invade on this guy over and over again. Which is a pretty quick way to pump up your portal if you're playing an invade deck, which I assume you would be if you're playing Occult Rite Master. Just as a 4-cost 4/3, he's got about a aggressively statted 3-drop worth of stats. And then the ability to generate a dagger would honestly make him like borderline okay-ish at 4 Magicka just with that, but the additional text of when he equips an item invade could give this guy some hope for like an aggressive invade item battle mage kind of thing, maybe. That whenever you start adding multiple kind of sub-mechanics together, I always kind of get iffy, because like you add all of your Daedra for your invade. Then you're going to add your Occult Rite Master. And then you're going to add a couple items cards. So your Crown Quartermaster, your Skilled Blacksmith, your Occult Rite Master. And there's just always the chance that you draw these cards like out of order and kind of turn it into a clunky deck. And that's always been the biggest difficulty I've had with these items decks, is they just have a tendency to draw out of order. And anytime you need to draw your deck in a particular way, besides obviously not drawing all your late game first, but anytime you need to draw cards in a particular order, it's kind of hard to rely upon. However, I don't want to discount this card's ability to pump up a portal all in one turn. Being able to go from no portal to potentially like a level 4 or 5 portal in one turn just by having a bunch of cheap Steel Daggers, it's nothing to ignore. So I think Occult Rite Master is at least solid, and it's just the kind of card that you're going to really need to carefully deck build around in order to get the proper payout from him. And then if you do, you can have a hyper pumped up portal and just start churning out cheap Daedra with a bunch of random keywords. So I think there's definitely some potential here. Rating wise, I'd probably give this card like a 3-star rating, but I think there's potential for that to go higher. Just like I said, this guy is going to be a deck building puzzle, And if you solve that deck building puzzle, there's potential to turn your invade deck into like a pseudo combo deck where you can just like go from nowhere to like full portal, dump my hand, tons of random keywords, get charged, go face, win the game kind of thing. Not quite a true combo OTK, but like a pseudo combo deck. But at the moment, I'd give this card like a 3-star rating and like nudge the more creative and better deck builders than I am to solve this puzzle. Next up, we've got the Mythic Dawn Informer. 2-cost 2/1 Dark Elf with Last Gasp, put a random Daedra into your hand. We can compare this to, there's the Nightblade, I think, something like that. It's a 2 magic, a 2/1 with the Last Gasp, put a Steel Sword in your hand. That card like doesn't see any play at all. However, a random Daedra is more than likely, I would have said before this expansion, a random Daedra is definitely better than a Steel Sword, because most Daedra were higher costed, higher value creatures. The pool is getting a little bit diluted just by the sheer number of Daedra that are being introduced. However, most of them are still pretty strong, so I would still say more than likely a random Daedra is better than a Steel Sword on average. Additionally, I'm assuming if you're playing Mythic Dawn Informer, you're going to be playing an invade deck, so more Daedra means more chances to play a cheaper creature that gets buffed by your portal. Additionally, from what we've seen so far, there's not a ton of early game drops for invade decks, so something like Mythic Dawn Informer that kind of doesn't push your invade, but kind of sets you up for future turns with your invade after, by getting extra Daedra to play, I think could potentially see some play. But it's just, I'm a little iffy on this one. I think it could potentially be okay if invade really takes off, but has a tendency to run out of gas. This can kind of put a little more gas in your tank. But overall, 2 magic at 2/1 is a little bit eh. We'll see, though. I think this is like a 2-star rating at the moment with a potential ceiling of 2.5 stars. I'm just not fully seeing it right now. Next up, we've got Aeolus' card, the Blind Moth Priest, a 2 magic, a 2/3. On your turn, Blind Moth Priest glows while your opponent has a prophecy on top of their deck. So I've since learned that the glow is only when this card is on the field. And that soured my opinion on it quite a bit. I was on the impression when I first read this card that if this card was in your hand, it would glow while it was while there was a prophecy on top of your opponent's deck. And I think that would make this card incredibly interesting as a card you don't want to play, but just kind of keep it around as an information gatherer. And there's a chance that maybe the information I received was wrong and it still works that way, in which case we'll have to revise our rating. But I just think that there's probably better 2/3s that you want to play. And just getting the information about a prophecy on top, depending on your deck, like a slower deck's not attacking anyway, so they don't care if there's a prophecy on top. And a faster deck kind of has to attack anyway, whether or not there's a prophecy on top. And maybe they may delay it for a turn, or maybe it makes a difference between, like, if your opponent's at 16 and you have one creature that can attack left over with 1 attack, do you get that 1 damage in? Maybe not with Blind Moth Priest, but, like, this guy doesn't also really fit into an aggressive deck super well. So I'm kind of hoping that the information that I got was wrong and that this guy glows in your hand, because that would make him a lot more interesting. But it also would be, like, impossible to play around because he couldn't be answered from hand if he can be hidden in hand. So yeah, this card is eh. Like I said, there's other 2/3s that you're going to want to play instead. And the information about a prophecy, while I'm not denying the value of it, paying 2 magicka and hoping a creature sticks on the board just to potentially find out about a prophecy, it's a kind of tough sell for me. But who knows? Maybe this fits into like a monk deck that runs that super pilfer action that steals and plays prophecies for free from your opponent. But again, that's a fringe case. I'd give this card probably about a 1.5 star rating. But like I said, I hope that the information I got was wrong and that it will highlight in your hand, because then that makes this card quite cool, but also impossible to play around. And finally for today, we've got Vulcanaz Mage. A 1-cost 1/1 Daedra with Ward. And when this guy's ward is broken, you invade. I think this card is very strong for a couple reasons. Just like we said with the 1-cost 1/1 red guy, early game invades are important for the mechanic to snowball, and it very much looks like a snowball mechanic to me. This guy helps you snowball. However, even better than the 1-cost 1/1 guy, this guy has a ward, which means he fights better in the early game. He could trade with some 2-drops because, you know, trade in, break the ward, and then trade in again. But even more so than that, the fact that his invade is tied to the ward breaking, while it means you don't invade right away and your opponent can play around it by just not contesting this creature, unlike the 1/1 red guy, if there's already creatures in this card's lane, you can give it more wards to invade more times. So this guy is another very interesting card for kind of making invade snowball. And we've seen things like Scroll Seeker pick up into play recently. That's a 1-cost 1/2 with ward. It has Treasure Hunt, but that's usually more often than not being triggered. And also, just this guy kind of fits into those mono blue lists running Baron of Terror that have been like popping up more and more. It's just a solid 1/1 body with ward. Ward is solid. You buff this guy at all, he fights pretty well because of the ward. And again, don't overlook the fact that once he trades, you've got your 0/4 portal. Portal's online, start snowballing. I think this is going to be another potentially key invade card. Again, this card will be good if invade is good. If invade is not good, my rating for this card doesn't matter because none of the invade cards will matter if invade doesn't make it, so to speak. So I'd actually give this card like a 3.5 star rating, just because it's really pushing that early snowball for invade. And that's what I think the mechanic's going to need to thrive ultimately. So yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Let me know what you guys think of these cards down below in the comment section, what you would rate them, which one you think the best is, if there's any synergies that I missed, let me know all that down below. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.